from the 809 Restaurant and Lounge in the heart of Inwood, New York City. Welcome to Inwood Artworks On Air. It's where I meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, dancers, and artists of all stripes who make their home what we affectionately call Upstate Manhattan. I'm your host, Aaron Sims, and today we welcome dancer and choreographer Julia Bengtsson. Swedish-born choreographer Julia Bengtsson came to New York in 2012 to immerse herself in diverse opportunities that have ranged from classical ballet to Baroque opera and film. She has choreographed over 20 productions at venues such as Carnegie Hall, UN Headquarters, Bruno Walter Auditorium at Lincoln Center, and Alvin Ailey Dance Center. In addition, she has choreographed and directed works for Opera Lafayette, Connecticut Ballet, Atlanta Baroque Orchestra, among many others. She is fluent in Feuillet notation and aspires, through her study of historical choreography, to create total works of art that embody the Baroque meaning of ballet. Julia dances nationally and internationally and regularly performs with companies including New York Baroque Dance Company and the Connecticut Ballet. She received 10 years of education from the Royal Swedish Ballet School and was a scholarship student at the Joffrey Ballet School. In the summer of 2021, she was the first choreographer to be awarded a position in Early Music America's Emerging Professional Leadership Council. She has served 4 years as board member and choreographer of the Higher Ground Festival and as a choreographer and advisory board member of Bach Cello Suites Festival. We're going to talk about her work as a dancer and choreographer and so much more, but first, let me welcome you, Julia, to Inwood Artworks On Air. How are you?
Thank you, Aaron. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, it's great having you. So Julia, starting off, I want to ask you if you can explain what you mean when you say you strive to create work embodying the Baroque meaning of ballet.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a good question. During the Baroque, there was this concept of presenting a fusion of the arts, which they called a ballet. Now, when we think of ballet today, we don't necessarily think of singing and poetry, but during this time, there was this idea of a total work of art, of dance, drama, music, design, and also propaganda. And I think this concept is just fascinating, and that is what I strive to accomplish when I create works of art generally. So even if I'm making a dance piece only, there might not be spoken word or singing in all of my ballets. I still look at each work as a whole, as a total work of art. It should work from every standpoint.
Love it. I think that is an amazing part of your work that I think is vital if anybody's seen your work, because it describes, you say, total work of art. You're pulling from different pieces to create a total cohesive whole. You're not just focusing on maybe just, as you said, ballet, as we kind of consider today, contemporary-wise, just a single form of dance, right? It incorporated more aspects and more forms, right, to incorporate the production. So your work as a choreographer who generates your own work many times doesn't just follow traditional approaches. It pulls from many different forms, including spoken word and opera and film in various forms. So where does your curiosity to experiment, to combine these forms come from in your work?
I think it is a curiosity. I love collaborating with experts from other fields because I myself is maybe not an excellent filmmaker, or I myself is certainly not a great composer. So I collaborate with other people who are, and that I think that really strengthens my work. I think when combining forces with other great artists, I think I can accomplish so much more than I can on my own.
Totally, absolutely. Can you give us an example?
Many. But so, for example, the work I created this summer with composer Brian Morales is called Strangers. And I think this very much embodies this principle of combining forces. Let's say, so he is a composer. He had this great idea about making a story ballet about immigration. Now, as a choreographer, hearing that idea, my mind sort of goes wild, but so we discuss the idea and we come to a few key principles. So it's a very political work, especially in our time and day. So what movement vocabulary do I think will help that idea to get communicated most efficiently? So I chose a vocabulary that was verging on, it has a lot of contemporary in it. It also has classical ballet. But I pick and choose what dance pieces I think what dance movement is going to help this story to be told. Then we immersed ourselves in literature. He had this idea of telling the story through commedia dell'arte, which is a Renaissance art form that used a lot of politics in this art form. So we read Italian folklore, and so we picked a story that we thought embodied the idea that we wanted to tell. And then we worked with a costume designer, and we worked with a music organization and a producer in Cleveland, Devin Hinso with FP Creative. We worked with musicians from Cleveland. We had dancers in New York. And together we were able to accomplish this great project that was so much bigger than we were.
I love it. I love it. And how was the project received, since we all weren't there to see it?
Right, of course. Well, so because of COVID, we were not able to perform more than a 10-minute excerpt. That was performed live with Connecticut Ballet, their last summer tour, which was, in September, late summer tour of 2020. So we performed that in New York and in Connecticut in different outdoor stages and socially distanced. It was wonderful to be performing in front of live audiences. But then the full ballet was filmed in June, and so we're currently planning our premiere early next year, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, that sounds great, and we can't wait to check it out. That sounds like a really great project. And will it be here and Cleveland, or where would it be?
We will have one New York premiere and one in Cleveland.
Very good, great. Well, I love the idea, like I said, all these different pieces coming together, different factions and different, again, creating this idea towards a total work of art. It's just such a great, it's very simple in execution, you would think, but when you have a whole bunch of different people thinking in different ways, moving in these different parts coming together, the fusion word I think you said earlier, something really beautiful can happen by all these different ideas coming to the table, and again, creating something quite contemporary from all these traditional forms that people may be surprised about.
Yes. I think all these historical art forms can, like you said, really inform current works, and vice versa. We take contemporary ideas and things that are very current in politics and things that might happen suddenly, like a pandemic, and we put that into art form as well. And I think that way we're able to create a document of our time, I think, but using classical forms, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about your latest choreographed project, which you also perform in, Shadow Dance Light Tales.
Oh, yes, that was a fun one.
What styles did you incorporate, and where did the idea come from?
Right. Oh, so this goes way back until my first participation in Higher Ground Festival, where I made a shadow play for my first collaboration with them. And so I loved working with shadow play, and I thought it was a fantastic way to tell a story. So I wanted to make more, and so Inwood Artworks presented a few iterations of this project. Is it two?
Some early development ones for sure. Yeah, we did on the back porch.
Exactly, and then the Broadway Gallery.
And then the Broadway, the pop-up gallery.
Right, yeah.
And that preceded Higher Ground. The actual performance is a Higher Ground later, I thought, right?
No, that was that was the first thing I ever did for them.
Gotcha.
So that was 2000.
That was your first thing for them.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then I did another.
Well, then you developed the idea.
That's
right.
What
it was.
That's right. So Most Beloved Sister lived in different forms, both at the Winter Rise at Higher Ground and with Inwood Artworks. And so we developed this. We added live music, which is very important for me. We worked with music director Paul Schipper and Dong Myung An, violinist, and we added another story. So we had one Swedish story and one American story, and we performed it live in September.
We did.
In Inwood, and we also performed it at Little Island.
That's so great that top and the bottom of the island got to witness this work.
Exactly, that was the idea. So we used, of course, some shadow play is very similar to ballet in some ways, where it's all about angles. So you have to watch your angles, the angle of your head, the shoulders, because otherwise you will reveal the shape that you're trying to make won't look like a cat or whatever you're trying to make with your body if the angles aren't exactly right. Also, you won't look like a person. Your head might be blown out of proportion, your arm might be blown out of proportion if you're not watching the exact angle of every single movement you do. So it requires for a lot of rehearsal. But I was very lucky to perform with Abby Marchessault, who you know very well.
Yes, she's great.
Who's my right hand and left sometimes. So yeah, we were working out. We've been performing together, shadow play together since the very beginning, and so she knows how hard it is, and she's putting in the work.
Well, it's really, I can't tell you how great it is to hear that you work with the same collaborators over and over again. Like I said, you've done so many Higher Ground festivals, and you're a board member. You and Abby have developed this piece over like 4 years, and it's just two of them doing all these roles. I mean, how many roles do you guys play?
I haven't counted.
But so that tells you enough you need to know right there. So many roles, and it's universal too. So it's really amazing work these ladies do. And what also I enjoy about your work that you kind of mentioned earlier too is that you actively seek out to produce in Northern Manhattan, where you live. And can you talk about your fondness for using Uptown as a stage and how it has served to inspire your work?
Of
if
course.
It has.
No, it has, of course.
I don't assume anything.
I mean, the people who live here, and so when I'm looking for a subject for a piece, I go to things that really move me, which is very often people and their stories. So of course, I'm trying to think of a specific example, but I mean, the immigration issue is very much a present theme throughout my work.
Yeah.
And that is very frequently occurring to you as you just walk through Inwood, of course, that there's so much influx of people from different places, of different backgrounds, and that's what makes the neighborhood so amazing.
Yeah.
And so, of course, when you hear these people are struggling, I mean, I'm an immigrant myself, and so I only know what I have to go through. And when I hear other people's stories and how it's so different coming from Mexico than coming from Sweden, that is also really hard not to get very moved by.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is, of course, a huge source of inspiration. And then I love presenting Uptown, because then I'm presenting for people who come up and talk to me afterwards. These are people that I see on the train or on the platform, and like people come up to me the day after a show and like, hey, I saw your show in the park and I couldn't believe it when, I lost an aunt too, and like I don't come from here. It's really beautiful.
Well, I think it's great. I think that sense of community that you foster through your work by being present, and the repetition of your work, trying to keep staging it Uptown and finding ways to collaborate with people who live Uptown, and it's a really great community builder by getting to know your neighbors, and it widens your circle for more people who would want to invite to possible collaborate, or just, you know what, we need audiences, people to see your work and spread the word too. So can't say enough about this Uptown community and how supportive they are, both artistically and as just what's called cheerleaders for the arts. So you mentioned there's a girl coming over from Sweden here, being an immigrant. I'm curious, when you left Sweden and you came here, and if you had a chance to tell yourself any advice then where you are now, about being here in the life, like, could you imagine your life here in New York City now when you left Sweden?
No, I was only going to come here. I had a scholarship for a year, so to me it was all going to be only a year. And then, they gave me an even bigger scholarship the next year. So, how can I not take that? And then I got my first job. And then, and after you get your artist visa, then suddenly you can work more places, and it's hard. It's always really hard to turn down a good opportunity, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, what's next? Where are you going next with your work?
Oh goodness. There's a lot of things happening this spring that I'm excited about. There's a lot of things. I'm really excited about my work with my mentor and director, Catherine Tarosi of the New York Baroque Dance Company, who's given me so many amazing opportunities. So I can't wait for that. I'm making a pretty large work to premiere in May, hopefully, in June with Neil Rolnick, who's a composer, uptown composer on 181st Street. There's a lot happening. I hope.
And just curious to stay with the theme. Are these all different forms? Like, just curious what kind of. Like...
Oh yes. I mean, with Catherine, we perform Baroque works, so it's 18th century mostly.
Okay.
Baroque opera, ballets, reconstructing from Feuillet notation. So it's looking into history and see how we can learn from that today, which I love that part of my life right now, is the detective work, the research.
And the universal themes that emerge from that.
Yes, exactly. And this and this beautiful notion that, how much we can learn from their musicality, from their art, still today, that we really don't know much.
Gotcha.
Sorry, you had another question that was also really good. Oh yeah, different art forms. Yeah. So Neil Rolnick is a pioneer in electronic music. He revolutionized the art form in the 80s, and he's still very much active. So that's all coming from electronic music, but he's actually writing a piece for a 10-man ensemble that's going to be performed live. So
cool.
Mixing electronic music with acoustic.
And what kind of dance would be a part of that?
Oh, it's actually fascinating. I'm working with Marnie Thomas Wood, who is in her 80s. She was Martha Graham's assistant and principal dancer. And so I'm
dropping people.
Oh yeah. Well, we know who Martha Graham is,
yes.
Right? And then we're combining. So our cast is 86 years old and 14 years old. So we have a range of dancers from very young to very old, combining them in one work. So the dance movement is going to be very much based, of course, on the individuals dancing, but very much in a storytelling manner. We're telling these stories of very young people and very old people.
Love it. Fantastic. Well, you're so busy, and yet I just love hearing about different projects, and it's a perfect kind of closing to what you talked about before, because like for a total body of work, not only just within the piece itself, all these different forms converging and creating a work, it seems like your projects are also very different, and yet they're also very much you. You have all these varied interests, but yet they're all within the same neighborhood, literally sometimes geographically, I guess.
Yes.
But really though, it's it always keeps coming back to there's this. I love this part. Like you have a fervor for exploring and seeing, like the detective work, and how it relates to who you are now, the identity of people as they live today, and merging maybe traditional forms with contemporary forms.
That is an interesting observation. I haven't really reflected on this, but
you can tell me I'm full of crap if you want to.
No, but it's interesting because in one way, I'm the happiest when I'm both, pushing forward and exploring and looking back at the same time. So
there you go.
It's a very large span of years, of course,
sure.
18th century to 21st century.
Yeah, but you're so young.
Right. I'm very happy with the variety that my work offers.
Yeah.
Never 1 week is the other Right.
You don't specialize. Your specialization is diverse.
It's very vague.
Vague, but I don't know. I say less vague and more, like I said, experimental. You like to dabble and you like to explore.
Yes. It's really nice to be able to really branch out. So, Yeah, but then I would love to look into what happened in the 19th century too, you know.
It happened. You definitely can.
Yeah, I know. I hope I have enough years to look into it to get there.
Well, you know,
I got stuck in the Baroque.
You are still young. You have plenty of time.
Yeah, I'll get there.
And also, I was saying, like, so is there a particular form of the 19th century you want to explore?
I mean, what happens after there's I won't say it's a gap, but during a certain number of years, during Louis XIV and quite a few years after that too, but it's maybe 50 years or 75 years where we have a lot of documentation of dances. People were notating dances as we notate music today. And so as a choreographer today, I can look at this notation and reconstruct what the dances looked like. But then there is a time where we don't have as much documentation. So, well, what happened then? I'm no expert in the subject, of course, but yeah, I know people who are, and I would love to do research with them, to learn from them, and
cool.
Look into it myself.
Well,
before
Julia,
classical ballet.
Well, like I said, I think you're going to have, I could see the sparks in your eyes as you're talking about this stuff. So I think you're just maybe in the fall you'll start 19th century. I don't know, but you're such a go-getter, and I admire your zeal and your energy to exploring all these forms, and no doubt you will get to them. So, Julia, it's been a pleasure speaking with you here today on Inwood Artworks on Air. And before we say goodbye, where can people go to find out more about your current and forthcoming projects?
I have a website, juliabengtsson.com. I'm on Facebook. Julia B. Dance, I think, is the best way to follow my work.
Is that Instagram?
There's an Instagram too, yes, Julia S. Bengtsson. Because believe it or not, Julia Bengtsson happens to be one of the most common names in Sweden.
And yet she's probably the only one in New York City.
Yeah, right. That has 5 consonants in a row in her last name.
That's what makes you special.
Right. Exactly.
Well, you can, listeners, you can find out more about Julia. We'll put the links to her page in our description of this episode. So check it out and stay up to date with all the amazing, let's say, ideas and inventions that Julia's putting together coming up next year. So thanks to Julia for being on this Artist Spotlight episode of Inwood Artworks On Air. It's where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all kinds who make their home here in Upper Manhattan. If you have a moment, please show us some love right now by rating and reviewing this podcast on Apple Podcasts. It really does help. Many thanks to 809 Restaurant and Lounge here on Dyckman Street for hosting us. They're such a wonderful, wonderful supporter of Inwood Artworks, and to Heightsites.com for local uptown promotional support. Be sure to follow us on social media at Inwood Artworks to keep up with all that we do, which includes the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Al Fresco, pop-up art galleries, and so much more. And if you'd like to support On Air and our free programming, you can do so by making a tax-free donation at inwoodartworks.nyc/donate. This program is supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. From the top of Manhattan and the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Aaron Sims for Inwood Artworks On Air.